steely-eyed killer shadow in the night. You were born to fight. You gotta light 'em up.
My name is John Krotec, and I want to welcome you to Straight Outta Combat Radio, audio medicine by Green Zone Hero. We're here to honor the wisdom of America's most valuable asset for combat veterans. We're authentic, we're empowering, we're American.
Save us all before they burn it down.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Straight Outta Combat Radio. We've been off the air for a couple of years, and we're reigniting it because we feel like it's our duty to share these stories of our veterans who have worn the uniform and who are willing to share and let others know what it was like being in the military, but also what their message is for all of us about freedom. Super excited about this episode. This is a friend who I haven't seen in a few years. His name's Terry Ford. He's down in Florida now. Well, he's been in Florida for a while, but I met Terry several years ago when I was involved in a 31-mile hike through the streets of DC called 31 for 31 Heroes, 31 miles for 31 heroes. And Terry can talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to give a very brief biography of Terry, what he sent me, and then we're just going to get right to his story. Terry is a Navy brat, and he was actually kind of a rare duck, if you will. He actually stayed in one location for many, many years while his father served. And any of you that know anything about being a military brat know that you jump around a lot, you move around a lot. We'll talk a little bit about his experiences as a Navy brat, but more so what he did and how he got to the Navy and what he did in the Navy. And then we'll end with whatever comes to mind. You know, we don't script these, and we do appreciate you coming back to Straight Outta Combat Radio and to giving the support of our veterans and listening to their wisdom and their stories. So without any further ado, Terry, it's good to see you, brother.
Absolutely.
Miss you, man. It's been a few years, but I know that
you've been sick.
Yeah, it has been. So let's get rolling here. I know that, you know, you were a Navy brat, like we said, but tell us about that.
So, I mean, I was born in North Carolina, like in the bio. My dad took orders to Puerto Rico for the next 3 years, and at that time he was an enlisted parachute rigger in the U.S. Navy. So my dad is a Mustang. He went from seaman all the way to commander. Was an LDO, so you know he went the full stretch. When we relocated to Virginia Beach, he was stationed at Oceana, and you know the only moving we did was from an apartment that we had first moved into to the house that would become like my home, you know. And how he managed to keep us in that one location his entire career is an exception. Like that's almost unheard of. And he kind of got to do that by basically shore duty, sea duty, you know, going off on the carriers out of Norfolk, coming back to shore duty in Oceana. You know, they're both huge bases. So, you know, it's possible, but you know, yeah, that was just unique.
Well, that's pretty cool because it's the first time that I've heard of a career person being in one location for that period of time. But what's really cool about it, and it just dawned on me, is that gave you and your family a level of stability that a lot of military families don't have.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. When did you realize that your dad was somebody special, you know, from being a service person?
Well, I always knew my dad was special. I always joked when I was younger that I thought the military slaughtered my dad's sense of humor. Like he had no sense of humor because of the military. And, you know, I had my own little rebellious side. I'm like, there's no way in hell I would ever join the military. The military ruins people, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, as I started to become older, you know, I didn't have a thing that I wanted to do or be. The one thing that I probably wanted to be was like a firefighter or a cop or something like that. And at the time when I was actually trying to go to become like a firefighter, I had a couple of speeding tickets, which kind of disqualified me at that time to go to firefighter school. So, you know, I graduated high school. I moved into my first apartment, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And it wasn't too long after I had moved in my apartment that September 11th happened. And we all know which direction the world went after that. And so I started to more entertain the idea of like, you know what? I need to just pull my head out of my ass. I need to thrust myself into something that's somewhat beyond my control and just be what it is. And I had talked to my dad. I'm like, Dad, what would you think about me going into the Navy or, just the military? And of course he was like, yeah, he was all for it,
Right.
So he pointed me in the direction of some reputable recruiters. And
Yeah, I like the way you say that. I remember
Well,
the
I
MOS I got. They tried to sell me something, and I was like, I'm glad I didn't take that.
I had talked to an Army recruiter first, and the Army recruiter I had talked to had tried to sell me on a way that I would be able to buy and drive a Humvee as an enlisted person going into the Army. And I was like, you're full of shit. I'm going to go somewhere else.
There you go. Exactly. See, you even knew, though, your spidey sense was up, man.
Yeah. And I'd ask him, like, Dad, do you know somebody who's not going to sell me a line of shit? Like, just give it to me straight. What can I do? I knew I wanted to go in like the computer realm, So I initially enlisted to become a CTM, cryptologic technician on the maintenance side. When I signed on, I was guaranteed to go to A school, which was going to give me an automatic promotion to E4. So, I mean, I had a rapid progression promotion wise. I think I was an E5 inside of a year and a half from joining. My first duty station was the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you remember the movie G.I. Jane, but the first opening scene, there's a building with 4 globes on it. That was literally the building I worked in.
Interesting. Yeah, I did see that, and I do remember that building. Were
Yeah.
you in it when they were filming it?
No. That was way before I ever joined.
Gotcha.
So, it was a very easy job. I was a watch stander, so out of a 12-hour day, I had to watch computers. I called myself a professional mouse clicker.
That's interesting. Well, back up just a second.
Yeah.
Before we get to the mouse clicking part, tell me a little bit about, or tell the listeners a little bit about your basic training. What was it like to go from A to Z?
I think everybody has the first initial thought when that first night you're in basic training, and no matter where it's called and what branch of service, like I remember standing at attention in front of my rack saying, what the fuck did I get myself involved in?
Yep. That is the truth, man. That's probably the most honest, statement ever. So yeah.
But I mean, most people know that you're not going there for summer camp. It's supposed to be something hard. It's supposed to be challenging. It's supposed to take you out of your comfort zone, to make you to put you on the path towards what you're going to be. So yeah, I mean, would I say it's a nightmare? No, it's not. For some people it is, because they've never known, that level of challenge. I didn't come from a rough family. I called myself your stereotypical suburban white boy. I mean, there was nothing horrendous about my upbringing. I loved my life growing up, but it was a drastic change in comfort level, going from having my own apartment with my own bed and my own room, driving myself around, having a job, to now I'm at the beck and will of these 3 guys that are barking at me all day long. Like every moment of my day is scripted, and it's a big transition, but it's about character building and making you be a stronger person. You don't know what you're capable of until you have everything taken away from you.
That is a fact.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest eye-opening experiences about any level of basic training is being completely stripped down. And in that state, you get to truly understand what kind of person you are and what kind of inner strength that you have.
That is
You know,
true.
so
Yeah.
that was my summed up experience with like basic training.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You know, think about this though. So now we're into the mouse clicking world, and you make it sound like there wasn't a purpose there, but there are some jobs that maybe there isn't a purpose. I don't know, but I would seem to think if you're in that building with those 4 radar globes on there, you're doing something more than just clicking mice.
Yeah, I mean, being a CTM, you're part of the intelligence community,
right?
And so, yeah, there was a point to it. There was a necessity for it, and the stuff that came from that served a very valuable purpose. You know, us being junior enlisted, you know, you're not going to be tasked with something extremely, extremely important. Like, I'm going to give you something, and the more I can trust you, I'll give you more responsibility.
Right.
That's across the board in the military. You know, I'm not just going to give you the keys to the liquor cabinet. You know, let's give you the keys to the house, let you in, see how you act, and then the more I can trust you, the more responsibility I give you. And that'll come to play a little bit later on when I took orders to Dev Group. But yes, you know, the mouse clicking, while monotonous and very, very drone-like behavior, did serve a very higher purpose.
Well, I know you're in security and high security, you know. Is there anything looking back on it now that the listeners that you can talk about that maybe you were part of that sticks out in your mind as something that really was, you know, badass, or holy cow, I made a difference? Or no? I mean, maybe you can't tell us. I don't know.
I mean, my first duty station at DC, I mean, I know that I played my little part in a much grander thing, you know.
Right.
It wasn't until I got to DevGru that I was, in a sense, given the keys to the liquor cabinet and started seeing the direct implications of my service towards the mission set. You know, it's hard for a lot of people when they first get in the military to understand the point of a lot of the seemingly stupid shit you get involved in. You know, when I was at that job, I had a 2-month deployment to Germany. The commandant itself was being stood down and relocated, and we were staying in an army barracks. And I remember like coming back off watch one day, and me and my buddy were going to go out in town and just explore something. And somebody had put a sign on our door saying, "You're invited to the cleaning party at 1600." And I'm like, I don't want to go to a fucking party. Why the hell? I don't know any of these people. Why am I going to go to a party? We had no clue what a cleaning party really was. In our minds, it was like someone's having a party, clean. I don't know what that is, but I don't care. And then we came back, and of course, you know, the barracks sergeant, whatever the rank was like, you know, why the hell weren't you at the party? I'm like, I didn't want to come. And they actually started like, they're like, oh, this guy has no damn clue what I mean by cleaning party. So we got to learn the purpose of that, and that was just, you know, that was kind of a tangent, but it was the one like funny thing I remember.
Well, what was the cleaning party?
It was, you better report your ass here with a fucking mop and a bucket and get ready to clean all the shit out of the barracks.
So, well, you know what though, you were in an interesting time. You know, you mentioned, you know, the Twin Towers that fell, 9/11. Yeah. And then, you know, I know that they used a lot of, it still do, a lot of those special operations soldiers and a Navy SEAL. They used a lot of those. So I'm sure that you saw and were privy to a lot of that going on. So that was a very interesting time period for America.
It was. And, you know, not to harp back on fast forwarding to DevGru, but my experiences at DevGru showed me the importance of seemingly mundane pieces of what I did prior to that.
Right.
So I got to see the product from that first duty station utilized in intelligence applications in the more operational side, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. As
Yeah.
you grew in knowledge, you were able to see things, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place more so than as a junior enlisted. So you're doing your job, you're clicking mice, you're going to these cleaning parties or not going to these cleaning parties, and you decide. Did you do 2 tours, or when you went to re-enlist, you decided to do something different? Is that how it went down, Terry?
I only had 1 enlistment.
Okay.
Now, because my first command was being decommissioned, they were in this big shuffle to find people orders to here, there, and everywhere. When I was actually in A school, you put down your dream sheet of what you want to do when you get out. And I remember there was 3 things that I put down because I had heard, these were the little Billy Badass things you can do. And one of them was DevGru at the time, but I didn't know a lot about DevGru. It was like, I just heard that this was the badass thing to do. So I want to go do the badass thing. I didn't want to go to BUD/S. I never had any aspirations to be a SEAL. I didn't get that. Obviously I went to DC, but now because the command was being decommissioned, they opened up, they put us in contact with DevGru for their screening department. So me and like a couple other guys, we sent in our packages and we got selected to go screen for DevGru. I was the only one that actually got in from the group from DC going. And, one of the reasons that they accepted me was because of my experience with being a watchstander already. It was the comm center at DevGru that they needed people for, and I was already used to that. I already knew the lifestyle of being a watchstander. So that was how I got to DevGru.
Explain to listeners what DevGru is.
DevGru is Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Obviously, everybody knows at this point it was referred to as SEAL Team 6. So it is the elite of the elites of the Navy SEAL teams. So you don't get, like, from a support perspective, I was a support guy. So SEALs are called operators and everybody else is support capacity. You don't just get orders to DevGru, whether you're support or you're a SEAL. You have to screen. Basically, it is a very long interview. So for the support side, we had to go through basically what was a 3-day screening process where you show up, they put you through the ringer with PT to make sure you're actually physically able to meet the demands of the command, because you're deploying with these guys. You have to be in shape in case you have to go out the door with them. You're sitting in oral boards, you're having to get, you're just getting grilled because they want to know you. Like, don't give me your little bullshit spiel, don't give me the mask you put on for everybody else. Who are you? What can you do? What can you do for us? What do you have to offer? And that's what you have to prove in multiple areas, not just sitting down on a little 1-hour interview for a job. No, like when you go to a command like that command is your life. Everything about your life is the command. Everything else is secondary.
Right.
So that was another culture shift in and of itself, coming from a very relaxed, cushy chair somewhere in Washington, D.C. to now I'm in Virginia Beach, ironically, the place I was trying to get out of when I joined the military, and now I'm going back.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works, man. Be careful what you wish for, but the universe has a way of rewarding us or punishing us depending on how you look at it. So, yeah, so you did your first tour, and then you went back in, or as a support personnel for DevGru, but as a contractor, I guess.
No, so like I said,
okay.
I had 1 enlistment, but
right.
I was at 2 different commands. So my first command, I was only there for like a year and a half, 2 years, and then I was at DevGru for my final. I was at DevGru for my final 4.5. So my enlistment was a total of 6 years. I had to obligate for a 6-month extension because the minimal tour at DevGru was 4 years.
Okay.
So yeah, first tour, DC, second tour DevGru, all 1 enlistment.
Gotcha. So you extended. So because Dev Grew's a little bit longer is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Typically orders were in the Navy for an enlisted person anywhere from 2 or 3 years. 4 years was a longer extension for a command, but because of how much so much was expected of you at DevGru, it was going to be a 4-year tour, because your first year, you're just trying to merge and become a functioning member of the command. There's just so much to get a handle on. It takes you a solid year. And that was one of the first questions I asked somebody when I first checked into DevGru, was like, how long is it going to take before like I am dialed in? I am here. I know what I have to do. And he goes like, it's going to be at least a year.
Right.
All the training you have to do, all the other schools you have to do. I mean, their support training pipeline. You're going to like SEER. A lot of guys go to airborne, and I mean, this was 2005 when I went there. I left in 2009. So, I mean, I don't even know what it's like there right now, but.
So, well, it's high speed, like you just said, Terry, it's the best of the best. So it's obviously a hell of a lot more challenging than just clicking a mouse. And
Yeah.
so you got what you wanted. You got it. So
Yeah,
you're living your Navy dream. And so you must have been like a sponge just taking in all these things, So you did that. Thank you for that. And anything that sticks out with DevGru that maybe somebody that's thinking about it needs to know more than what you've already shared?
When you go there, it's not about you. It's about the team and the mission. I don't know what their screening process is now. I don't know what the requirements are to go there, but a lot of people go there. At least when and I'm speaking from the time frame of when I was going in. I can't speak to what it is now, but you had to go there wanting and needing to contribute to something that was way outside yourself. In no way, shape, or form was you going there going to be about you. It's about the team. It's about the mission. You better bring something to the table or get the fuck out. They had no time for bullshit, because you were on a 1-hour recall. When you checked in, one of the first things you got was a pager. When that pager went off, you better have your ass on that compound within an hour, and God help you if you weren't. So it doesn't matter where you are in life. I don't care if you have, I don't care if you're married. I don't care how many kids you have. When that pager goes off, you get your ass there. I mean, that was number one. So you had to be ready to dedicate everything to that, and when you show up, know what your lane is, know what the other lanes are, so that you don't drift into it. You have a mission, you do it, let that guy handle his shit.
I got it.
And
so
the other unique part about it was, the power structure was based on, and I don't want to call it power structure, but you know what I mean by that, was who knows their shit. Like we all went by first names there. We never called anybody by ranks, So, and that was because, like, while it does matter, it didn't matter what your rank was. The level that you mattered based on what you knew and how good you were at it. So you could have an E5 be responsible for a team of like E6s. In conventional military, that's unheard of.
Yeah, it is unheard of. The things that you're talking about now. So one of the prerequisites or one of your requirements for anybody even thinking about DevGru is you better bring some humility with you. And you also better be bringing some sacrifice with you and be willing to give it up for the team, is what you're saying. None of that Lone Ranger cowboy shit there.
Okay. Know your shit, be good at it, and be ready to execute. Point blank.
There you go. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No excuses. No excuses at all.
So you get to the end of these 4 years, and I know that they're probably a lot more action packed than just sitting there looking at a computer, because you're with some high speed operators, and there's some other stuff going on, and so you come to this decision point. I mentioned it earlier, but I had it a little bit wrong. You come to this decision point: am I going to re-enlist, or am I going to do something different? Tell us about that process and what you did, and then We'll expound a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the 4 years at DevGru, it's a high speed life. You're always traveling, and at that time, I was hitting a bit of burnout. I was entertaining. Like it was a big, it was a big decision point. Do I want to move forward with this, or do I want to do something else? And at that time, one of my he's my brother. He had already gotten out of the military. He had stayed in DC. He was in the contracting. And I was sitting at dinner with him, telling him, like, I'm really thinking I'm going to reenlist. I'm actually comes to find out I'm actually pretty good with this military thing, you know. And he's like, "Yeah, no, you're not." I was like, "What do you mean I'm not?" He goes, "Here." And classic movie trope. He grabs a napkin, he writes a salary range on it, and he goes, "This is why you're not reenlisting." And me being, the E5 in the military, I see the number that's on that napkin, and I'm like, "No, fuck, no, I'm not." Okay, yeah, no, I'll leave it.
I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah. So that was, it was a very good opportunity to leave and kind of follow the umbrella of a trusted network of friends and family. It wasn't me just like leapfrogging, like, YOLO, let me say screw the military and jump out, because I've seen guys do that and I've seen them crash horrendously.
Yeah.
So it was the right opportunity at the right time.
Well, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about, were you married then?
Yeah. Well, I was married when I was enlisted. That marriage fell apart literally as I was transitioning out of the military. So
Okay, so I know you're married. I met your wife. She's awesome. And
yeah.
so that happened when you got out and was done with the first one. I don't want to pry too much.
No worries. No, I'll be flat out honest with you. I'm on my third marriage.
Well, that's good though. At least and you're learning, as we go. So I'm only
Yeah.
on my first one, but I waited till I was 30, before I got involved with anybody like that. But anyhow, so pay rates goes up, but you're still working in a high speed environment. You're still working with friends and family that you consider, and you're still mission oriented. How did you get, I mentioned earlier, Terry and I met on this veteran centric initiative to basically read the biography of the people on Extortion 17 mission. Can you explain a little bit about Extortion 17 and why you got involved with 31 for 31?
Absolutely. Extortion 17 is the call sign of the Chinook that were shot down over the Wardak province, August 6th of 2011. So I was already out when that happens, but it was DevGru that was on the Chinook. So at the time, I was on a business trip to Australia, and I had been watching the news that night and heard that the Chinook had been shot down, and I saw some of the names, and like my heart sank because I recognized the names. I instantly, the second I saw the names, I was like, "Oh shit!" These were my guys. They were only releasing a couple of names at the time for obvious reasons. But it wasn't until I got back from that business trip and I was sitting down, and one of my buddies had sent me an email on the classified network with the entire list of the guys that were on the helo. And as much as it was a gut punch to see that on the news, just reading that entire list of names, first words out of my mouth like, fuck, and I mean, I had to get up and I had to leave and just go home that day. Like I couldn't sit there at work and just, yeah. So, I started getting a little bit more details in it. Having the accesses that I have, I got to read a lot of the reports surrounding it. But long story short, those guys were out doing what they do, making bad guys' days worse. And you know, a local bad guy got off what was a very lucky shot for him and a very unlucky shot for us.
Yeah.
You know, the bad guy was in the right place at the right time, and we were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Everybody on board that Chinook died in the crash. There were 7 Afghan nationals on board. You know, we don't mention them a lot because, quite frankly, I don't know who they are and I don't have any of their information. All I know about them is that, you know, they were there helping us out, trying to make their country better. And that is extremely honorable and commendable. You know, there are conspiracy stories out there about it, and people can formulate their opinions. I'm not going to downplay things, but you know, the cliche saying "war is hell," bad shit happens, and it does. Even to the most elite individuals, you know, it is the tragedy of war.
Well, you know, thanks for sharing that, and you know, and sorry for anybody that you knew that, you know, that was lost on that, and their families too. You know, so but we've heard the taking, you know, lemons and making lemonade. And that's what they did with 31 for 31. Tell us about that, Terry.
Yep. So on as the 1 year memorial was approaching, I hate using the word anniversary. I wanted to do something. I didn't quite know what. So I got this idea that, you know, I'm going to go and I'm going to ruck a mile for each one of the guys that was on that helo. You know, and I was just going to do this by myself. I was living next to a converted railroad track, the WOND Trail in Northern Virginia. And, you know, I had recently done a endurance challenge called Go Ruck. And, you know, everybody that had done these formed a kind of a little tight-knit community around the Northern Virginia area. So I threw it out there on Facebook. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to do it here. But if more than enough people want to join me, I will relocate this in DC. I'll come up with a route. You know, I'll get T-shirts made. We'll raise some money to, you know, benefit a charity that supports, you know, the families or, you know, lost service members. I wasn't aware at the time that the organization 31 Heroes had been stood up to already do this from a charity standpoint. So I stumbled upon them in my research. So that first year, to my own amazement, like 60 people decided to come out for this thing, which I did not think that was going to happen. So I actually had the participants do research on each one of the guys. I'm like, go online, find out everything you can find out about these guys, and write up a short bio about them. And my logic behind this was, you will get more out of it if you research something than if I just give it to you. So they did that. They generated a lot of the bios that I still use during the event today. And that first year, we raised 15 grand for 31 Heroes. And, you know, we've raised various amounts over the years. And I think I never thought it would go past that first year. And here we are coming up on the 12th year. And I mean, I've had hundreds, if not a few thousand people do this across the globe. I mean, I even had one of my old buddies who I served with even did this on a treadmill on a ship in the middle of the ocean.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
that's cool. You know, and I was humbled and honored to be on it. You know, people wonder, what can you do 31 miles? And I'm like, yeah, you know, we can do 31 miles. We just need to pace ourselves, right? But I have to say, Terry, the 2 years that I went, I think the second year I came back, we brought a couple of extra people, and the ladies that we were with, Yvonne, and I think there was a Navy commander or Army colonel or something, but to walk all night long through the streets of Washington, D.C., the route that you formulated, and to stop at an historic monument or a place, and to listen to the biographies of the people who were killed on Extortion 17, and you're doing this all night long, and it seems like you get stronger and stronger as the night goes on, because you realize that you're sacrificing for these people that you never knew, but you knew that they cared enough about their country that they gave their life for it. But to roll in past the Pentagon into Arlington and into that row where some of these people are buried. Sometimes there's family members, there's guys wearing Navy suits, there's Marines. But to be there in the early morning, you've been up there all night. I got to tell you, brother, it gives you a different perspective on what America is all about, what these people were made of, and the people that you're hiking with, to realize that there are people that can still, carry a ruck and get it done, and doing it together. That you being invited. Thank you for doing that. But to be invited to do it and to finish that is probably one of the most touching, heartfelt things that I personally have ever done. So thank you for that, and God bless those people we lost. And you got me psyched up now, man. I'm ready to come back this year. Now I'm only 2 hours away. So, so sorry, I didn't mean to digress, but that's how much that meant. And we linked up somehow, but there was a reason, and the reason was to give me that opportunity and to allow me to that experience. And without sucking up too much, just thank you for that. Yeah.
No, it was an honor to have you. Thank you for coming out for it.
And I'll be
back.
People
like you coming out for it. People like you coming out for it is what makes it what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very touching. So, listening to Terry share that story and the history of that story and how it got started. If you're still listening, and I hope you are, we hope you are. And find out more about that. Terry just said, if you want to create something meaningful in your life, give it some due diligence. Look up 31 for 31 and join Terry and his personnel on the next one. I got to tell you straight up, as somebody who experienced it and want to do them again, you won't be wasting your time. So, yeah, it's pretty heavy, brother. So I did do 31 miles twice. I know I could do it, and I'm an older guy, so you can do it too. So you're into contracting now. You're down in the Tampa Bay area. There's a lot going on down there, and you're married, and you have a wonderful wife. Like I said, you have 2 children.
Yep.
And you're even at work right now. You can see Terry's in some kind of vehicle. Not sure what it is, but
it's just much.
but thanks for joining us. I just, I know that we're winding down here, Terry. This is a question that I've always enjoyed asking. People have shared their time with us on Straight Outta Combat. And I get a different answer every time. Or if it's the same answer, it's told in a different way and makes it special. Let me ask you this. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom to me, and it's such a thought-provoking question because not many people ever actually genuinely think about it. A big thing about freedom to me, it might seem like an oxymoron, is sacrifice. Freedom is, having the ability to live your life on your terms. Understanding that comes with a high amount of responsibility and acceptance of the world around you. Freedom is one of those things that when you genuinely have it, a lot of people take that for granted and never actually think about it. Like I just said, you never really think about it until it's taken away from you. When going back to basic training, you learn what freedom is when you first go to basic training, because that's one of the first things you're deprived of.
That's true, man.
Yeah. In a generalized capacity, it's being able to live your life on your terms and do what you want with your life without anybody really dictating otherwise. But I think a big thing that people don't factor in when it comes to freedom is that, freedom is not exclusively yours. It's all of ours, and we're all free to do our thing. We're free to be ourselves. You know, we're free to make our own decisions. We're not free from the consequences of our actions. People don't quite get that, I think. But, you know, I appreciate where I'm at. I have a deep, deep love and appreciation for the country that we live in. And, you know, if you just take a step back and generally just walk down the streets, depending on where you're at, that could be a good or bad idea. But like I said, I sit in Tampa, Florida. I can walk out my front door. I can let my kids play in my front yard. I don't have to worry about somebody coming up, shooting them in the head. I don't have to worry about driving down the road and have a bomb go off next to me. You know, I don't have to leave my house wearing armor, you know. And I appreciate that, you know.
Absolutely.
Being able to live, you know, yeah, it's a very hard thing to actually, you know, verbalize and get across. But I don't know if I made sense in what I was saying.
No, absolutely, you made sense. You know, there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. U.S. Navy veteran Terry Ford, son, father, husband, and warrior who has sacrificed and knows commitment and teamwork and what I say, give back. And the wisdom that you just shared right now, Terry, about the responsibility, about not taking freedom for granted and that it isn't ours exclusively, makes all the freaking sense in the world, man. So if you're going to do something and you feel like you're free to do it, just remember that it might have an impact on somebody else. And if it's going to have a negative impact, think twice before you do something. So thank you, Terry. Any closing thoughts, man, for anybody listening? And would you like to say anything before we sign off here?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on, man. Like, thank you very much for even thinking about me. I love what you do. I think it's a great thing, and I think it has a very strong impact on things. And thank you for everything that you do in support of the veteran community. You know, you're doing good work, man, and I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And I'm gonna see you this year, man. I'm 2 hours up the road, and you know I have to get back into the mix again. And I've kind of isolated myself, put some poundage on, and it's time to get back out there, brother. And roll.
You're comfortable, man. You live
Yeah.
the farm life, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much. God bless.
All right, you too, brother.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Straight Outta Combat Radio, audio medicine from Green Zone Hero. If you liked what you heard, then tell others about us. Like us and download us. And please remember, freedom is not free, and combat veterans are vital assets. They're not broken.
Sing our song before they burn it down.